All right, welcome to another deep dive. You're gearing up for the IELTS and you're ready to tackle writing task 2. We've got your prep materials right here. We're going to unearth some gems to boost your writing. Boost your score.
It's interesting.
IELTS writing task 2.
Yeah.
People call it the beast of the IELTS. So let's get you ready to tame it.
It's really interesting how often test takers, they kind of miss the core of the question.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how many, well-written essays actually end up off topic.
It's like showing up for a job interview in a fantastic outfit, but for the wrong position.
Exactly.
Exactly. So this guide really emphasizes that first step, understanding exactly what the question is asking. So why is that such a big deal?
Well, because IELTS examiners, they're looking for very specific responses. And if you misinterpret that question, even a beautifully written essay, it won't score well. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. You need to get that foundation right.
Okay, so the guide breaks down these different essay types, right? We've got opinion essays, problem solution, and discussion.
And each of these, requires a slightly different approach. For example, an opinion essay that wants your clear stance, backed up by evidence. But a discussion essay, on the other hand, needs you to kind of do a balanced analysis, exploring both sides, and then maybe leaning towards one. And that nuanced difference is what can really kind of trip people up sometimes.
So if we look at the example in the guide, social media has a negative effect on relationships. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So that's an opinion essay.
That's a classic example of an opinion essay. You've got those keywords like negative effect and relationships that really clearly define the topic. And then you have that phrase, to what extent?
Mm-hmm.
And that signals that they want your opinion. They want you to express your viewpoint, but they want it backed up with clear reasoning.
So, it seems kind of obvious when you look at it that way, but I can see how in the heat of the moment,
Absolutely.
you could overlook these little subtleties, and that could send you down the wrong path.
Exactly.
Now, the guide stresses planning, which, some people might find a bit tedious. So 5 minutes just to brainstorm both sides, even if you already have a strong opinion. Is that really necessary?
Oh, I would say absolutely. It's crucial. You see, this is not just brainstorming. It's thinking strategically.
Right.
Because by considering the opposing viewpoint, you're kind of preempting counter-arguments that the examiner might have. And that shows critical thinking, which is, a key aspect of scoring well on this task. And plus, it helps you structure your essay, that classic structure, introduction to body paragraphs and conclusion.
So it's not just coming up with ideas, it's like almost anticipating the examiner's perspective and then organizing your response accordingly. That's a good insight, actually. All right, let's talk about introductions. I like how the guide calls this your first date with the examiner.
It is.
You got to make a good impression.
You got to make a good first impression, for sure.
Yeah, so how do we do that?
Well, you want to grab their attention,
Yeah.
and you want to demonstrate that you really understand the task at hand. And paraphrasing is key here.
Paraphrasing, though, that can be tricky, can it?
It can.
Because what if I misinterpret the question while I'm trying to make it sound, really sophisticated?
Right. It's a valid concern, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal isn't just to swap out words. You want to showcase comprehension. So practice rephrasing accurately. So, for example, turning social media has a negative effect on relationships into something like, many argue that social media harms personal connections. That shows you're not just parroting the question back.
So I'm showing the examiner that I can dance with the language.
Yes.
But I'm still hitting all the right steps.
Yeah, and hitting those steps gracefully.
Yeah.
You're showing them control.
Nice. Okay, so we've hooked the examiner with our intro. Now we're onto those body paragraphs. And these are really the meat of the essay, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Each one needs to be strong.
Think of them as building blocks. Each block needs to be strong and impactful. And the source breaks down a great structure for you. It says topic sentence, explanation, and example.
Okay, so if we stick with our social media example, a topic sentence might be, social media has revolutionized how people connect.
Perfect. That's a strong topic sentence.
Okay. And then
you explain that. You say something like, it allows individuals to maintain relationships despite distance.
Because now we're getting into the why.
Exactly. You're giving the reasoning behind your statement.
Okay, and then bam. Hit them with a real-world example.
Exactly. For example, platforms like WhatsApp and Zoom enable families living in different countries to stay connected.
Yeah.
And, that concrete example makes your point far more persuasive than just simply stating it.
Okay, I see that. And then the second body paragraph would follow the same format but focus on the negative side.
Exactly. So you might start with a topic sentence like, however, social media can also weaken real-world connections. Then you explain. Excessive use can actually reduce face-to-face interactions, leading to misunderstandings.
I mean, even though we're talking about IELTS, you're making me think about my own social media use.
That's the beauty of learning, isn't it? It often has unexpected applications in our own lives.
That's a good point.
And don't forget those linking words, however, on the other hand. These are really important. They make your essay flow smoothly. They're like the mortar holding those building blocks together.
Okay, so we've got our intro, we've got our powerful body paragraphs, and now what about the conclusion? Is it just a summary or is there more to it?
It's your final word on your argument. It's where you summarize your main points, you restate your stance, and you leave a lasting impression on the examiner.
Okay, so no introducing new arguments here.
Absolutely not. No new arguments in the conclusion. Think of it like, closing arguments in a court case. You're reminding the jury what you've proven. So, for example, you might say something like, in conclusion, while social media can weaken personal connections, its ability to bridge distances makes it invaluable. Ultimately, I believe its benefits outweigh its drawbacks.
Okay, so it's concise, it's clear, and it reinforces your position, but without adding anything new.
Exactly. And a strong conclusion like that really demonstrates your ability to synthesize information and present a cohesive argument, which is exactly what those examiners are looking for.
Oh, okay, wow. I'm really starting to see how these pieces fit together. We've got that foundation, we've got the framework, we're building these persuasive arguments. It's like building a case piece by piece. I can't help but think about what you said earlier about social media connecting families across countries.
It's easy to get caught up in all the negative stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, this source does a good job of reminding us that social media can be a really powerful tool for good.
Right. I mean, how else would I stay connected with my friend who moved to Australia? Letters just don't cut it in the age of, instant messaging.
Yeah, and think about its role in activism, for instance. Social media has given a voice to a lot of marginalized communities.
Oh, that's true.
And it's allowed people to organize and mobilize for change in ways that we've, never really seen before.
It's like a global megaphone,
Yeah.
amplifying voices that might otherwise go unheard. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. It's all about using technology mindfully.
Yeah.
And recognizing, both its potential but also its pitfalls.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've talked about the content, the structure, but what about the actual, writing style? What are the IELTS examiners looking for?
Yeah.
Do I need to sound like, I don't know, some Shakespearean scholar to impress them?
Not at all. Not at all. Remember our mantra, clarity over complexity.
Okay.
The examiners want, above all, they want clear, concise, well-organized writing. They're looking for your ability to communicate effectively, not to just show off your vocabulary.
So it's more about choosing the right words to convey my meaning, accurately.
Yes.
Than trying to sound overly academic.
Exactly. Using a complex word incorrectly, that's far worse than using a simpler word that is used correctly. Think of it like you wouldn't use a chainsaw to cut a piece of paper.
Right. The right tool for the job.
The right tool for the job, exactly.
Speaking of tools, what about grammar and spelling? Are those as crucial as this guide kind of makes them sound?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even brilliant ideas, they can get lost in a sea of errors. Think of grammar and spelling like the polish on a beautifully crafted piece of furniture. They make the final product really shine.
Okay, so proofreading is essential then.
Proofreading is essential, yes.
Maybe even having a friend read it over for a fresh perspective.
A fresh pair of eyes is always a good idea. Always a good idea. And pay attention to those pesky articles, A. They can be really tricky for non-native English speakers, but they can make a big difference in the meaning and the grammatical accuracy of your writing.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how those tiny words can really trip you up. Okay, so we've got the content, the structure, the style, the grammar. What else do we need to consider?
Time management.
Time management.
Yeah, you only have a limited amount of time to plan, to write, and to proofread that essay. So practicing under time conditions, that's crucial.
Oh, it's like training for a marathon.
Exactly.
You wouldn't show up on race day
No.
without having put in the miles.
Without those miles, yeah. And just like with marathon training, consistency is key.
Okay.
Aim to write a few essays each week, focusing on, different question types, different topics.
So quality practice over quantity.
Quality practice, yes.
Yeah.
It's about challenging yourself with different scenarios, and really honing those skills.
Honing those skills, yeah. Wow, this is all making me feel a lot more confident, actually. It's like we've taken this big, daunting task, and we've broken it down into these manageable steps. We know how to analyze the question, plan our essay, write these clear and compelling paragraphs, and manage our time.
Yeah, and remember, the examiners, they aren't looking for perfection. They want to see that you can communicate effectively in English. So don't get too bogged down in trying to make every sentence flawless. Just focus on expressing your ideas clearly and cohesively.
That's reassuring, actually, because it's easy to get caught up in the pressure of the exam.
It is.
But it's really about showcasing your ability to communicate.
But at the end of the day, that's what it is. And this is, just one component of the IELTS exam.
Right.
You've got this.
I love that positive energy. Okay, so far in our deep dive, what, key takeaways do you want our listener to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, understanding the question, that's paramount.
Yeah.
That sets you on the right path, just like a map does for a journey. Without it, you risk getting lost, no matter how skilled a writer you are.
It's like having a fancy car with no engine. It looks impressive, but it won't actually get you anywhere.
Exactly.
So understand the question comes first. What's next?
Planning. Planning is your secret weapon. Those few minutes you spend brainstorming and structuring your essay, they're invaluable. They set you up for success.
Like an architect designing a building.
Yeah.
Without a blueprint, the whole project could just collapse.
Exactly.
So understanding the question, planning carefully. Anything else?
Remember that clarity trumps complexity. Focus on communicating your ideas clearly, concisely, using language you're comfortable with. Don't try to impress with big words if you're not really confident using them correctly.
Right. It's better to be understood
Yes.
than to sound impressive, but end up confusing the reader.
Absolutely. And let's not forget those crucial grammar and spelling checks.
Yes.
They're the finishing touches that really make your writing shine.
Proofreading is our best friend. Okay, this deep dive has been fantastic so far. We've tackled understanding the question, the planning, structuring, writing those effective paragraphs, and even managing our time. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore. So what about vocabulary? A lot of people think you need to cram in all these fancy words to impress those IELTS examiners. What's the truth about that?
Well, it's a bit of a myth. While a good vocabulary is definitely helpful, it's not about using the most obscure or complicated words you can find.
Okay.
The examiners really want to see how you use vocabulary to express yourself clearly and effectively.
So it's about, precision, clarity, not just showing off.
Exactly. Think of words like tools.
Yeah.
You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to try and open a walnut, would you?
No.
The same goes for vocabulary. A simpler word that's used correctly is always better than a complex word that's misused.
That makes total sense. It's like picking the right tool for the job. But how do we know which words are right? Is there, some magic list of IELTS vocabulary that we should all be memorizing?
There's no magic list. But there are some common IELTS topics that come up again and again. Things like education, technology, the environment.
Okay.
Building your vocabulary around those themes will be much more useful than just memorizing random words from a dictionary.
So I should be focusing on building a vocabulary that's relevant to the kind of issues that are likely to come up in the writing task.
Yes, and don't just memorize words in isolation. Learn how to use them in context. Pay attention to collocations, words that naturally go together. For example, instead of saying bad impact, you could say detrimental effect or adverse consequences.
Those sound so much more, sophisticated.
Right, but you'd have to be sure you understand the nuance of those words and use them correctly.
Oh, absolutely. Misusing a word is definitely worse than using a simpler word correctly. What about synonyms?
Synonyms. Using a variety of words to express the same idea shows the examiner that you have a broad vocabulary.
So instead of just repeating important over and over again, I could use crucial or significant or essential.
Exactly. It adds depth and sophistication to your writing without sacrificing clarity. And speaking of clarity, let's touch on sentence structure.
Oh yeah, sentence structure. Another area that a lot of people get really anxious about. Do we need to use super complicated sentences to impress the examiners?
It's about balance. Variety in sentence structure is good, but clarity should always come first. Don't be afraid of simple sentences when they're appropriate.
So it's okay to mix things up, have some short, punchy sentences and then some longer, more complex ones.
Exactly. It keeps your writing engaging and dynamic. And don't underestimate the power of good punctuation.
Okay.
It really helps to clarify your meaning and guide the reader through your ideas.
Wow, it feels like we've covered everything. Vocabulary, sentence structure, punctuation. Are there any, final words of wisdom before we wrap up our deep dive?
Remember, the IELTS writing task is all about demonstrating your ability to communicate effectively in English. Be confident, be clear, and let your unique voice shine through in your writing.
I love that. Be confident and let your voice shine through. This entire deep dive has been so incredibly helpful. We've explored every nook and cranny of IELTS Writing Task 2, from understanding the question, planning, structuring, writing those powerful paragraphs, and even polishing our language.
And we busted some myths along the way. It's not about using the biggest words or the most complicated sentences. It's about clarity, accuracy, and effective communication.
It's about showcasing your skills and letting your personality come through in your writing. We've given you the tools, the insights, the strategies. Now it's your turn to practice and put them to work.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect. And don't forget to have fun along the way. Writing can be enjoyable, even when it's for an exam.
That's so true. Find the joy in the process and you'll be amazed at what you can achieve. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of IELTS Writing Task 2. Best of luck on your IELTS journey.